It's pretty wild to think that one of the most important books about stock trading was written a full century ago. Today, we're diving into Reminiscences of a Stock Operator, which is basically the life story of the legendary trader Jesse Livermore. The lessons in this book are so on point that it's still considered essential reading on Wall Street. So let's get into it and see why. This quote right here, this is the whole game. It's the reason a book from 1923 feels like it could have been written yesterday. See, the technology changes, the companies come and go, but the one thing that never, ever changes is human nature. The market runs on fear and greed, on hope and ignorance, and that's a constant. The patterns from 100 years ago can tell us so much about what's happening right now. So where do you even start with a legend like this? Well, the book starts at the beginning, and the story, it's almost hard to believe. We're talking about a kid, a teenager, who was outsmarting the market pros before he was even old enough to vote. Can you just picture that scene? He's 15 years old, he walks in and just drops $1,000 on the table. Now, back then, that was an absolute fortune. His mom, well, she was terrified. She begged him to put it in the bank, thinking it was some kind of dirty money. But for him, it wasn't just about the cash. It was the proof. It was proof that his method, his figuring, actually worked. And you gotta understand, he wasn't trading on the New York Stock Exchange or anything. He was in these places called bucket shops. Think of them as sketchy back alley casinos for stocks. You weren't really buying anything. You were just betting against the house. And if you won too much, the house lost money. Well, he got so good so quickly that these shops literally started banning him. He wasn't just getting lucky. He had cracked the code. By the time he was just 20 years old, he had stacked up $10,000 in cash. His mother still thought he was just a gambler, but he kept telling her, "No, I'm making money by figuring." And that right there is the key. From day one, he never saw the market as a game of chance. To him, it was a puzzle, and he was convinced he could solve it with logic. So, what was this secret figuring all about? It all came down to a single powerful skill: his uncanny ability to read the ticker tape. Long before we had fancy charts and endless data, there was just this stream of prices, the tape. And for him, that tape was the only truth that mattered. And this was his big aha moment. He realized that the price action itself, the what, was everything. All the news, the rumors, the articles explaining why a stock was moving, that stuff would come out days, maybe even weeks later. And by then, the move was over. The tape tells you what's happening right now. And in this game, now is the only thing you have. This really puts it in perspective, right? It's the fundamental choice every trader has to make. Do you act on the information the market is giving you in real time? Or do you sit on your hands and wait for a newspaper to tell you why it happened? He learned really fast that waiting for the why is a losing strategy. I just love this line. It's so blunt, so perfect. It's his entire early philosophy in one sentence. You see the pattern on the tape, you recognize it, and you go. You don't second guess, you don't wait for some expert to agree with you, you act or you get left in the dust. What he was doing over 100 years ago by pure instinct, well, today we have a name for it: trend following. His intuitive tape reading is the granddaddy of this whole modern strategy. It's all built on the exact same idea. Use the price as your main signal, find a trend, and just ride it. It's all about cutting your losses and letting your profits run. Okay, so reading the tape is the technical part, but what's the next step? This is where the book goes from being a trading manual to, well, timeless wisdom. He found out the hard way that the toughest part of the game wasn't the market. It was fighting his own emotions. This is probably one of the most incredible metaphors for trading I've ever heard. It's one thing to be a great shot at a shooting range, right? It's easy to make millions on paper in a simulation. But can you do it with perfect calm when your own real money is on the line? When the pressure is so intense it feels like a gun is pointed at your chest? That's the real test of a trader.
So what are these inner demons that can wreck a perfectly good strategy? They're the same for us today as they were for him. Fear makes you sell a great stock way too early. Hope. Oh, hope is dangerous. It makes you hold on to a loser praying it'll turn around. Greed makes you bet way too big. And that ego, that burning need to be right, that makes you fight the market instead of just listening to it.
And this brings us to one of the hardest things to do psychologically. He tells this great story about an old trader they nicknamed Turkey.
Whenever someone would tell him to sell and take a nice, quick profit, he'd always say, "If I sell that stock, I'll lose my job." And what he meant was his job was holding a position in a strong, trending stock. Cashing out early for a small gain was like quitting an amazing career just for one day's pay. The real money, the life-changing money, is made by having the guts to ride the big moves.
Okay, so you've got to conquer your own mind, but you also have to avoid the traps that other people set for you. The book is just packed with these cautionary tales about the classic mistakes that rookies always make. And believe me, these traps are just as common and just as dangerous today. Does any of this sound familiar? Your buddy gives you a can't-miss tip. A super charismatic CEO on TV convinces you his company is the future. You decide you need a new car, so you're going to force the market to pay for it. Or you see a quote from an unnamed source talking up a stock, right as the real insiders are quietly selling. These are the classic sucker traps, and they're all baited with their own hope and greed.
And to prove just how powerful these traps are, the master himself fell right into one. He met this guy, Percy Thomas, a cotton expert who was brilliant and incredibly persuasive. Thomas had such a compelling story, such exclusive inside info, that Livermore completely abandoned his own system. He stopped listening to the tape and started listening to the man. The results? A catastrophic loss that wiped out years of hard-won profits. It was an absolutely brutal lesson about the danger of a good story. All right, so after all these epic wins and devastating losses, what does it all boil down to? What are the actual rules we can take away from all this? We can really distill everything we've learned from the book into a handful of core foundational rules for trading.
Here they are. Number 1, follow the trend. The market is showing you the path of least resistance. Take it. 2, cut your losses quickly. Think of a small loss as the price of insurance against a big one. 3, let your winners run. Have the courage to stay in the game. That's where the real money is. 4, manage your risk. Simple. Never bet the whole farm on one idea. And finally, number 5, and maybe the most important, control your emotions. Because if you can't do that, none of the other rules even matter.
And that brings us right back to where we started. This one sentence explains why this book has survived for 100 years. It's not really a book about stocks. It's a book about people, about psychology, and about patterns. Which leaves us with one final thought. If the game really doesn't change, are we just going to keep making the same old mistakes? Or can we actually learn from the hard-earned wisdom of those who played before us?